There is something to be said for saving young lives from self destruction by drugs, despite the fact that you almost certainly end up hated by them for requiring them to comprehend the world as it really is, rather than how they fictionalize that it could be. To understand why UW Dialectical commanded this tape, you have to understand what John Lennon did on, I don't think it was Ted Koppel, it was one of the other ones. He said, oh, if I went around saying don't do drugs, the children would look at me and say, who are you? Well, John Lennon knew who he was, and he knew that wasn't true. In fact, as a point of fact, when the Quarrymen gang were forcing me to use inhalants, I comforted myself by telling myself that John Lennon said it wouldn't really hurt me. So you have to understand that Israelis were behind that situation with me. In Israel, we have a perverse ingratitude situation, which the police department is never going to admit, so they'll never get anywhere with helping children with drugs. The Zionists were behind the trafficking. Their logic was told to me by Colucci when he said that Larry Gelmini warned people not to pull fire alarms because they get a substance on them where you could be shine a flashlight on you and be identified as the snitch. And that's how Tony Servian and Wattenmaker justified putting a nerve agent in forcing me to swallow it on what was the veterans were calling an extra hot hallucinogen. And in my slave consciousness, I used to think maybe it will help me write better poetry. So there's really not much you can do without the cooperation of the police department identifying the military poison syndicate that is institutionally trafficking children with drugs. But the usual method of getting around that necessity is to, which to their credit, the black culture tends to be a little bit more wise to. They tend to be a little bit more wary of police authorities' role in terroristic drug trafficking. They tend to be a little bit more sensible about Reagan, not always. I mean, if you look at Seattle's black culture and Pittsburgh's black culture, they came drumming to justify what Reagan was doing, to me. So you have a situation where people have to understand that vice trafficking is one of the institutions in America. It's been traced to Japanese pornography in Hollywood. What happened to our culture is that Hollywood was never understood to be properly constructed as an institution of nanny processes. There used to be a legion of decency, but they became the legion of parochial snivels. There's no way that you can hotwire around the fact that human beings make out and make love, go steady, and have children, and so you have to address the both the parochial processes and the medical processes and the emotional processes indulgently and at length without resorting to appeals to the lewd mindedness of observers invading privacy. I know that sounds like a lot to do, but it's just common sense. And when you come to the appeal of drugs, that's usually false witness about the recreational stimulus involved. They're dangerous, and children sometimes like to take chances. But my mother justified drumming out intellectual action about how I was tortured by saying, well, she used to tell me not to run in the street or play on the roof. So these are the conversations that go on. But the big conversation had to do with the mirror of our society and influence that Hollywood represented. We're supposed to turn up our noses and go, no, no, when we hear about the necessity of teaching values and good conduct and true heroics in Hollywood. But we're not supposed, instead we're supposed to enjoy bombs and killing and recreation. In fact, the whole idea of TikTok war tuning in to genocide in Gaza was to get America to acquire a taste for these things. So you need to address and ask very simply, how have young people acquired the taste for self-destruction? What is it about the ordinary world that so makes them so unhappy? And maybe you will get somewhere if you go through the full processes of conversations that are involved openly, categorically, and at length. There was an essay by a psychologist yesterday in Substack somewhere where she talks about identity and bonding between persons who see themselves in the leader of a personality cult. And that's what makes this such a malicious enterprise on the part of UW. They're arching up with claws for the Krokag Registerkorrellis to summon forth the idea that I'm a danger to the Lenin Enigma, that my values killed him. My values didn't touch John Lennon. My values kept away from him, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I hitchhiked from Pittsburgh to St. Louis in 1979 just to hear Robert Fripp play guitar. I didn't go to New York to get Lennon's autograph. It would have been easier to do from Pittsburgh. I could have gotten a bus ticket. You see, the simple-mindedness of Star Sandwich is actually a magic carpet to renounce people who try to save children from the Beatles. I don't like them. I don't think John Lennon really died. I think he set this up as a form of hypnotic mind control to make our society self-destruct in vengeance for Europe, who were put down in the blasphemy of World War II, of which, of course, the Krokag Register is the purest of the victims. Yeah, yeah, yeah.